So welcome, Miriam. We appreciate your leadership. As always, we'd like to begin all things by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we're on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. So we acknowledge all of those who toiled without compassion or compensation. And we acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So please, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the remarkable work that you're doing.
Hi, I'm Miriam. I am an aspiring Sufi. I am off and from Karachi in Pakistan. I am a mother. I am a daughter, sister, wife, a big believer in social innovation, a practitioner of social entrepreneurship, and a long-time fighter for decoloniality and social justice across the realms that I work in.
Amazing. So can you share a bit about your background in international work before immigrating to Canada?
Sure. So I have a weird professional journey story. So I started off in law and studied human rights and a lot of decolonial law actually in Pakistan before I went off to the US. So I ended up in the US in California at UC Berkeley for my master's in international humanitarian law.
Oh, wow.
And the more I dove deeper into law research and practice, the more I realized how much we have in terms of rules and legislations and law, but how little we have in justice.
Wow.
There was very little justice and so much law. And I tried to get past that. I worked in cases pertaining to illegal renditions, detentions, secret prisons, as part of the post-war on terror nightmare that happened with BIPOC communities in the global South. And it was extremely challenging work. And at some point, I think it started just weighing down on me a whole lot. Right. At the same time, while I was still in law school in Pakistan, some friends and I had started a youth movement. As part of this youth movement, we were exploring what social innovation is, what it can do in places like the global South, learning from examples like Muhammad Yunus across the border in Bangladesh, and really thinking about, wow, what if we replicated some of these things in Pakistan? And more so, what if young people could do social innovation? What if that was a career option for them? And so we started Pakistan's first social enterprise incubator, trained hundreds of entrepreneurs, partnered with universities and other nonprofits and ecosystem building organizations, eventually even led to policy shifts around social innovation, social finance, and the way entrepreneurship is practiced in the country. We did a lot of work internationally with partners as well in the global South. So partnerships that led to a lot of shared learning across Latin America, Africa, and South Asia. And it was just really, really rewarding work. And another two pieces that were a lot of like my personal passion came from peace work. So I did a lot of interfaith work in Europe between Muslims, Jewish, and Christian communities, and also a lot of post-conflict work. So India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, track to diplomacy work. So it just all kind of combined together to inform how I look at social innovation, social finance, and all these things, which is more of what I'm doing now in Canada.
That's incredible. So based on your journey that you took to get where you are now, what would you say your personal mission and vision are?
I feel like it keeps crystallizing that we need a whole other set of ways to know, do, and be in the world. And increasingly, it has become my role to be one of those edge walkers who show that that's possible. So I think a lot of it is coming, sort of honing in on what are other wisdoms telling us
Right.
What are other ways of being in the world that exist right now? What are they telling us about our current crises, whether it's the climate crisis, the health crisis, the housing crisis? There's so much us in the global north can learn from just the ancient wisdoms still alive in the global south. And so
Right.
more recently, that's been my calling.
Mm. So how important is research and innovation in the work that you do?
It's incredibly important because there's, particularly in the global south, when you're talking about wisdom traditions, these are oral. They're
Right.
passed down generation by generation, grandmother to child, and so on and so forth. And that's how they get documented. That's how they're remembered. Uh, and because of that, they're often missed in global north narratives, which are very sort of textual, very much about where is it written. It's a worship of the word and the written word,
Yeah.
uh, which means that there is a whole universe of knowledges, of learnings, of wisdoms that are missing. And so missing in the global north narrative, which tends to just hegemonize everything else.
Right.
And so it's important to use global north research tools to sort of flip that arrangement and bring those stories into whatever sort of meta narrative we have going on these days. But through those stories, actually get that meta narrative to implode upon itself. Because there is no meta narrative, there's a pluriverse of narratives. And
Yeah.
that's what research needs to accept and look like. But it won't happen till we bring those pieces in. And it leads to a new metamorphosis of sorts. So that
Absolutely. That's an amazing way of looking at it. Thank you for sharing that. So what inspires you most about the work that you do?
I'm constantly learning. It's incredible. Like I feel like, oh yeah, I know this thing about this place. And then I, meet someone, or I hear a new story, or I visit a community, and it's all changed all over again. And so this beautiful sort of ripple effect, like, you may have had a role in starting something, or you may have had a role in planning something, but when it's out in the world and it's constantly interacting with systems and changing them, it's
Right.
it's a drop, and that drop has this tremendous ripple effect.
Yeah.
And just noticing those ripples and learning from them over and over and over again, like you keep crossing that circle, but every time you're there, you realize, oh wow, it's a different circle. I just phased up, and it's incredible. I love that.
What challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and how are you and your team working to overcome those?
So I think one of the biggest challenges is that we're so set in the hyper capitalist, modern dash colonial systems, meta systems that we're a part of right now, that it's hard sometimes to sort of confront them head on, because the minute you do that, the system kind of goes into these rigidity traps, right? Like it fights back because it doesn't want to change,
Yes.
because power structures, people want to maintain the kind of power structures, institutions want to maintain their power structures. Yes, everybody wants justice and equity and diversity, inclusion and access, but not at the cost of power.
Right.
And so one of the biggest challenges is the system itself, and sort of the network of systems that are rigid in the way that they are and have been for centuries now. And so how do we go about talking about decoloniality? How do
Right.
we go about talking about justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and access in meaningful ways that are not checklisty, right? That are not like boxes to just tick off and then great, we've done a great job.
Yeah.
And then even within that, right? Like how, you know, there's a bunch of scholarship around this, around how decolonization, the word itself, is constantly metaphorized.
Mhm.
Oh, do this, we have decolonized. And no, you haven't. You can't decolonize. There's no decolonizing where coloniality is in the water. It is the water. And if it is
Mhm.
the water, like how do you breathe outside of that? And so there's
Right.
this wonderful research collective, gesturing towards decolonial futures, who talk about this. Vanessa Andriotti, Sharon Stein, they talk about how you're going to keep failing, but you have to keep trying. And
Right.
in that trying and failing is where we learn. And
Mhm.
so I feel like that challenge, but also that impetus, it's a struggle.
Yeah. Wow. That's very deep. Yeah. How do you feel about the future of social innovation in Canada?
I think it's shifting.
Right.
Uh, there's with Indigenous communities, with newcomer communities, BIPOC communities taking more ownership
Mhm.
and showcasing alternate ways of practicing it. I
Right.
think shifting. Um, is it shifting fast enough? No. Do things shift fast? Not really.
Mhm.
And so it's almost like, but there's this reckoning happening, and it's not just Canada, it's around the world. It's this
Right.
moment in space and time where there's a very clear reckoning that if we continue with the same practices, it's pretty bleak. The future is really bleak, and the earth is going to make sure of that. The earth mother is not going to tolerate this anymore.
Right.
And so, we have a choice. And, what are we choosing to let go, which no longer serves us? And in that letting go, what are we letting come, which we can no longer live without?
Mhm.
And so I feel like that's where we're at in social, even within also in social innovation in Canada, is I think
Right.
we're beginning to see that. And
Mhm.
that makes me hopeful.
So what is your ultimate goal, and what does success look like to you and your colleagues?
I think I've always looked at success as becoming redundant.
Mhm.
So if there's no need for social innovation anymore, then we've succeeded.
Right.
If there's no need for social finance anymore, we've succeeded, because all finance
Right.
should be equitable and just and all those things, right? You shouldn't have to have a separate category of finance,
Right.
but we do, which is
Wild. Mhm.
preposterous. It's preposterous. It's a sign of the systems and times that we're in. And
Right.
I think success would mean that these have changed. They have shifted so dramatically that there's no need for these kind of, you know, in between band-aid solutions.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. So I've heard a little bit about the Jedi stewardship work that you're co-facilitating. I'd love to hear more from you about it.
So one of the things that sort of emerged from our investment readiness program work at Wiser uh, was this sort of recognition that there's a lot of Jedi-oriented, BIPOC-facing, BIPOC-serving organizations in the IRP 2.0, which is a
Okay.
significant shift from the first edition.
Uh-huh.
But there was also this recognition that there's a lot more to do. And so one of the things that came up was, how does this group of organizations actually inform what more there is to do?
Right.
Uh, and that led to the creation / emergence. Honestly, it was just emergent. It came from a series of conversations we had with these organizations. And he
Right.
said, okay, what do you think is missing? What do you think we could do better? And there was this resonance across those conversations. And I was like, gosh, we all need to meet together, because
Mhm.
clearly we're all sensing on to the same pieces. And so we all met in circle and we said, okay, look, we can do this and we can also just not do this. It's an option. There's
Mhm.
no obligation here. but it would be very nice to actually come together and advocate for these changes together.
Right.
And so that's what the stewarding group is now slowly emerging, developing into, co-creating these, the recognition of these gaps, how to sort of, point them out, and
Right.
also how to point out ways in which they can be addressed.
Mhm.
So the idea is to have a very fluid, revolving membership,
Yeah.
option in, option out. Like there's no compulsion kind of
Right.
stewarding, which is essentially based on deep relationality,
Mhm.
just building deeper relationships, and in that building, recognizing shared needs, shared futures, and
Right.
then working towards them together, asking for better shared futures together. So that's what the stewarding group is looking like now.
How long has it been going on for?
Just a few months. So we
Yeah.
had our first convening just a couple of months ago.
Oh, great.
And so it's really in its early stages. We're very open to hearing from others, from having new members. Right now, it's very it started off from the IRP, but our hope is that it becomes something that sustains post IRP and can actually inform the way social finance and social innovation are practiced in the country.
Right. That's amazing. It's so refreshing to hear how how quickly individuals are up to responding to challenges, or even standing up to find solutions in times like these. So thank you for pulling that together. So before before we head out, I wanted to ask if you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for the community.
I think one of the most radical things we can do for ourselves and each other is to rest and heal. Because I'm seeing it constantly, where we're working so hard, we're constantly pushing the boundaries of burnout, and it worries me. And so I think a call to action for BIPOC leaders, practitioners, supporters, communities, heal and rest. For allies who want to support BIPOC communities, practitioners, leaders, communities, please create opportunities for these communities to heal and rest. If you can give the space for it, give the space for it. If you can finance it, finance it. If you can create opportunities for it, go ahead and do that.
Wow.
Please create the space for healing and rest.
Wow. Yeah. That's so eloquently beautiful. And I just feel like that really hits home. We all need to heal and rest. So thank you for that. We'll close the same way that we began this interview, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we're on. And we acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who have toiled without compassion or compensation. And we acknowledge all of the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Miriam.
Thank you. Take care.